Shabbat Shalom, friends and brethren. Hi, this is Jeff Patton coming to you for COG Webcast sponsored by the Judeo-Christian Foundation. Well, happy Father's Day to everyone out there. And I hope that this is going to be a great Father's Day weekend and that your family will be strengthened and encouraged and show that honor that they should to their fathers. Turn with me to Deuteronomy chapter 5 and verse 16. Deuteronomy chapter 5 and verse 16. Father's Day is actually built on a solid scriptural understanding. Of course, the cultures here in the nations of Canada and the United States of America were founded on by people who believed in the scriptures. They took their understanding of what was morally right and what was morally wrong from the scriptures. As opposed, now, we're living at a time when the leaders of our nations oftentimes take their inspiration from a very different source. No, they're not taking their inspiration from Jerusalem above, but what our ancestors understood and why we have this Father's Day celebration is because of this scripture in particular. Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 16, New Living Translation. Honor your father and mother, as the Lord your God commanded you. Then you will live a long, full life in the land the Lord your God is giving you. The Hebrew word for honor is Strong's 3513, kabed, to make heavy, to respect. The word honor goes deeply in respect, and it's something that when we approach this obligation, the Hebrew aspects, it's weighty. It's something we need to think about and carefully. It is very important. Come with me to Malachi chapter 1 and verse 6. Malachi chapter 1 and verse 6. This was the last of the Old Covenant prophets, and this was the message God wanted his people to hear. That's Malachi chapter 1 and verse 6. And it's a section always about concerning unworthy sacrifices. Verse 6. The Lord of heaven's armies says to the priest, a son honors his father, and a servant respects his master. If I am your father and master, where are the honor and respect I deserve? Wow, what a question. And a question to the Lord's priests there at the temple, the center of God's worship. If a son honors his father, yes, you know the commandments, and a servant respects his master. That's the way it works in business. If I am your father and master, because not only, was he their spiritual father from that standpoint, the priest, but he was also their boss, They made their living in his service. If I am your father and master, where are the honor and respect I deserve? You have shown contempt for my name. But you ask, how have we shown contempt for your name? You have shown contempt by offering defiled sacrifices on my altar. Then you ask, how have we defiled the sacrifices? It's very interesting. The Septuagint translation of that was done of this in Greek in the several centuries BC, which was the translation to the Septuagint was not all that long after the original Hebrew prophecy was written. But the Septuagint has it, it's not how have we defiled the sacrifices, but it's rather how have we defiled you? Because if you're putting a sacrifice, an unworthy sacrifice on the altar, that in the place of worship called by your name, where you place your name, they should understand. Those priests should have understood that they were defiling God. Anyways, then you ask, how have we defiled you? You defile, these sacrifices by saying, what? The altar of the Lord deserves no respect. Just like our leaders today say the commandments, the law of God deserves no respect. Here in Canada and the United States of America. Verse 8, When you give blind animals as sacrifices, isn't that wrong? Yeah, because, the scripture said, there would be healthy, vigorous animals that would be sacrificed on the altar. Isn't it wrong to offer animals that are crippled and diseased? Try giving gifts like that to your governor and see how pleased he is, says the Lord of heaven's armies. Well, even you know that. If you're going to give a gift to somebody, do you give somebody something that's all ratty and worn out or diseased in this case, and in animals, lame, blind, torn up? Would you do that? What kind of gift is that? Verse 9. Go ahead, beg God to be merciful to you. But when you bring that kind of offering, why should you be shown any favor at all? You bring that kind of offering, why should I show you any favor? Why should I listen to you? When we give our offerings to God, do we do so with proper respect, honor? If we do that, if we don't do that, then we fall in the same problem. God, why would God show us any favor if we don't honor him? But when you bring that kind of offering, that kind of defiled, unworthy offering, why should God show you any favor at all? That's the Lord of heaven's armies. How I wish one of you would shut the temple doors so that these worthless sacrifices could not be offered. I am not pleased with you, says the Lord of heaven's armies, and I will not accept your offerings. You can make all this, but I don't accept them. That's interesting. See, we it's the old story, I'll do whatever, I feel like for God. No, that's not the way it goes. Will God accept it? He tells us whether he's going to accept it. Verse 11, but my name is honored by people of other nations from morning till night. All around the world they offer sweet incense and pure offerings in honor of my name. For my name is great among the nations, says the Lord of heaven's armies. Even among the peoples who did not have the heritage of the scriptures. And I'm thinking here, living in British Columbia, of some of, the coastal Salish people who I'm familiar with and talked with and listened to. They have a respect for the Creator. In fact, it's really interesting. When they have some sort of ceremony or dedication these days, our provincial government services or municipal government, they'll inevitably invite an Aboriginal elder to come and offer a prayer or blessing. It's sort of part of the reconciliation of what this thing they're trying to do. And so they will pray and they will ask this in the Creator's name. And they'll sit there and listen to it. Now, they're probably, our politicians are going in their head, yada, 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 yada. They're not thinking about this. The Aboriginals do acknowledge the Creator. How many people acknowledge the Creator in our, quote, secular society, in our schools or anything else? Oh, no, they don't. But God says, my name is honored by people of other nations from morning till night. But God's people, those who had the Bible, their ancestors who took the Bible as God, as their God. No, we've turned our back on the God. We're saying, God doesn't deserve any respect. We're just as bad these days as those priests were. In fact, worse. Matthew 7, verse 21. Matthew 7 and verse 21. I'm going to cite here the Holman Christian Standard Bible. Matthew 7 and verse 21. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, okay, I'm going to do the religious lip service. Lord, Lord, we have there are those religious people who do that all the time. Much less so now. These days it's just the OMG stuff that you hear from kids and whatever, which is, in this way. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father in heaven. See, God's not impressed with words. He looks to see what's the follow through, what's the action, where's the beef? Verse 22, on that day, That's Judgment Day. Many will say to me, Lord, Lord, didn't we prophesy in your name, drive out demons in your name, and do many miracles in your name? Yeah, that was in previous generations where they were religious and people, would do that sort of thing. They wanted to look good, but they didn't want to do good. Now, our leaders now still want to look good, but they definitely don't want to do what's good in God, the God of the Bible sight. No, not at all. So didn't we do all these, these self-righteous stuff? Didn't we virtue signal all this stuff? Verse 23, then I will announce to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you lawbreakers. Literally, you who work lawlessness, talking about the law of God. That's what he's referencing. See, they're going to say, didn't we do all this wonderful thing? We had diversity, we had inclusion, we had equity. Didn't we do all this wonderful thing? I never knew you. Depart from me, you who are lawbreakers. You break the law of God. Let's go to Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 1 and verse 7. Proverbs 1 and verse 7. Proverbs of Solomon. Proverbs 1 verse 7, New Living Translation here, I'll quote. Verse 7, the fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. Oh yeah, that's still true, isn't it? But the fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. Fear, by the way, and you need an interpretation because we're dealing with Hebraic language, and a concept's almost 4,000 years old. Fear is, in Hebrew is Strong's 3374. You can look it up, Yirah. The proper fear of God means having reverence for him and his will. That is to say, having an attitude of deep respect tinged with awe and veneration. The fear of the Lord means having a piety that results in a devout fulfillment of one's religious obligations, like honor your father and mother. You will fulfill these things. You won't just cast off your aged parents, turn your back on them, steal from them, abuse them. I mean, they even, these days they're thinking, but it's gotten so bad in some places of elder abuse that they're having to, put in new laws and have, different bureaucrats to try to have a place where elders can call for help when they're practically even before they're dead. Their kids are picking at the estate type of stuff. I don't know. The fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. My child, listen when your father corrects you. Don't neglect your mother's instruction. What you learn from them will crown you with grace and be a chain of honor around your neck. When we think of a chain of honor, you think of, now here in the British Commonwealth countries, and Canada's still one of those, you'd have a chain of office, the Lord Mayor or the Chancellor or whatever it might be. They'd have something around their neck to show their office. It was a chain of honor. Let's go to Ephesians in the New Covenant Scriptures, Greek Scriptures, Ephesians chapter 6, in the Apostles Paul's writings. Ephesians 6 and verse 1. I'm going to cite this in the Amplified Bible version. Children, obey your parents in the Lord. Wow, that's a question. Here we have that word obey, which is in the 21st century. Obey is about as close a thing as you have to a swear word, a cuss word, as you could possibly imagine. Obey is one of those things. This current generation, in this current time, obey. What are we talking about? Children, obey your parents in the Lord. That means as, when they're acting as God's representatives, when they're doing what is right in God's sight. You don't obey your parents if they tell you to go out and do some sort of evil criminal thing, something that is sanctioned, that is prohibited by the Word of God. No, but when they ask you to do something, it says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is just and right," the Apostle Paul said. Verse 2, honor, that is, esteem and value as precious, as the Amplified draws out. Honor, esteem, value as precious your father and your mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. That is, that it will be well with you and that you may live long on the earth. I listened to this, and I tried to do it. To the very end of my parents' life, I would call my dad. I went, visited both my dad and my mom when they were in their final days. Called them, talked to them, visited them. Yeah, most of our every effort we could, we made to spend time to visit them, on vacation. We didn't go off, to Las Vegas or down to, all-inclusive Mexican resort to do this, that, or the other. We during our whatever time we had and resources we had, vacation money, we would generally think about our vacation going out and visiting our parents. It'd be a trip out, driving out, a few days out and a few days back, it used to be, or when we'd fly, to one of the Lord's feasts, we stopped in, to see my mother. We made every effort we could to show them respect, to show them honor, to esteem them, and to value them as precious. And I think they knew that. I know they knew that. So they told me they appreciated. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is just and right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. And what is the promise? There's a promise to it. There's a kicker. It says that all may be well with you and that you may live long on the earth. So there's a promise that's involved. If you do those things, if you honor your father and mother, and that means you're listening to what they have to say, you're learning from their lessons in life, then it's going to be better with you. You're going to build on their knowledge, on what they accumulated over the years, sometimes painfully. Experience can be a hard teacher. The school of hard knocks. We sometimes learn painfully. And we'd rather share those things with our children so they don't have to duplicate and go through the same stupid things that we did and had to learn by. That it may be well with you and that you may live long on the earth. And then it goes verse 4, Ephesians 6, verse 4. Paul goes on here, and he's talking to the congregation, and everybody's sitting there. Remember, when this is being read, everybody's listening. Fathers, do not irritate and provoke your children to anger. And the Amplified draws that out. Don't exasperate them to resentment, because that can be easily done at times, can't it? Fathers, do not irritate and provoke your children to anger. That is, don't exasperate them to resentment, but rear them, that is, bring them up. Bring them up tenderly in the training and discipline and in the counsel and admonition of the Lord. In Greek, the word provoke, fathers, don't provoke your kids. That's Strong's 3949. Per orgioso. You excuse my Greek. Excuse me. Parorgizo. Properly parorgizo. Properly to arouse someone to anger. Have you ever aroused someone to anger? Have you ever provoked someone? To provoke in a way that really pushes someone's buttons. This is what this word means. To really get to them up close and personal way. Well, when I was a kid, in the schoolyard, there would be people that would provoke people, sure, because they wanted to fight. They wanted to fight. But we're not to do that. We're not to provoke our kids to anger. Don't exasperate them to resentment. When it says, but rear them in the training and discipline, the word here is Strong's Greek word it's actually one word. It's Strong's 3809, paideia. Properly, it's instruction that trains someone to reach full development, maturity. We're to rear them in a way that, is going to help them to reach, full development and maturity. What we do, how we rear them, how we discipline them is for their good, and so they can reach a full development, a full maturity. And then rear them in the discipline and admonition of the Lord, or is here is the amplified, the counsel and admonition. Nouthesia is the Greek word. It's warning through teaching. This counsel, it improves a person's reasoning so they can reach God's solution. See, the admonition, you're to help them to think, to improve their reasoning so they can reach God's solution, not the devil's solution. In this society right now, there are too many people who want the kids to reach the devil's solution, especially when you talk about, some of the weird sexual stuff going on. This admonition, rearing them in the admonition or counsel of the Lord, that is, it's going through God's thought process. How does God look at things? Emphasizing the importance of receiving God's thoughts, in a renewed mind, something that is of faith. Because you're helping them to reach what God's solutions are to their problems. How they feel about life. How they feel about their gender identity, whatever it might be. You are helping them. Yeah, by the way, when I was a kid, we didn't have any problems with gender identity. It was really easy. As preschool kids, we figured out whether we were male or female. Very clear. We play doctor. He said, "Oh, you have one. She doesn't." Insies and outsies. It was real simple in those days. We didn't go through all this stuff they're going through now. It's sad. Parents, a father is, again, fathers, do not irritate and provoke your children to anger, but rear them in the training and discipline and the counsel and admonition of the Lord. It's Apostle Paul. We're Christians. Those are our marching orders, guys. Now, my wife wrote that. I really like this comment she made. Because, when you're a public school teacher, you get everybody else's kids. You get these kids, and they come, as they do. The quality control there is not there these days by any means. In parenting skills, it goes the whole gamut from those parents who are on the ball and those who are clueless. You have the whole thing. But my wife said, in my experience of working with many children daily over 2 decades in classroom situations, I have observed the following reasons for misbehavior. Failure to follow the rules to meet expectations. That's, it's real. You talk to any public school teacher of what their life is and trying to teach children, even the basics, reading, writing, arithmetic, whatever it is, it's difficult these days. Of course, this is all in context of having set, when you have a classroom, you set reasonable rules in the first place. This is a key. If you're a parent, you must set reasonable rules, something that is age appropriate. You can't expect a little child to have maturity and discipline to do stuff that maybe after 10 years of your working with them, maybe they'll be ready for. You've got to set stuff that is age appropriate in the first place. So maybe you have misbehavior because a child is young and does not yet have the capacity to understand what is expected. You can't expect, again, a small child to have much in the way of, get to understand certain things. They got to reason through. No, it takes time. Sometimes children misbehave because they lack situational awareness, and therefore they're not in harmony with the rules of the situation. They can't figure out the context of what's going on. In the classroom, you know that this is the appropriate behavior for right now. It's not crawling on the floor. It's not jumping out the windows or on any of these other things. Sometimes maybe a child misbehaves because they're single-mindedly focused on a goal and they're oblivious to all of the considerations like the rules. The rules of the classroom, the rules of getting along with other people. Sometimes a child misbehaves because in the excitement or emotions of the moment forgets the rule. Even adults do that. It happens in bars all the time. A child misbehaves because they know the rule, but can't see how it applies to them or their situation at the moment. Okay, they know the rule, but they can't see how it works with them. So you need to explain it to them. You need to say, you need to see this. A child misbehaves because they knows the rule but thinks something else is more important than the rule. No, you need to explain that. No, this is what you do first. Everything follows that. The first number one is you do this. Sometimes a child misbehaves because they purposely ignores the rule in order to get or to do what they want at the time. They are self-willed. You can sometimes see that at the checkout counter. You'll see a poor mom, and this child is throwing a fit because they want this piece of candy or whatever it might be, and mom knows no, it's not going to be. And they know they're not supposed to do that, but they're just focused on getting what they want to get. Child misbehaves because it breaks rule out of carelessness or failure to think through the consequences. Well, sometimes it's hard for children to see the consequences because they don't have the experience. They can't think through it. No, they just act on impulse. Sometimes a child misbehaves because they breaks the rule out of lack of motivation or laziness. Yeah, there are people like that. Child breaks the rule in order to test the boundaries. Oh, yes. Usually happens especially when you get to be teenagers. They're still children. They're going to test you. They're going to test all those boundaries. Do you really mean this? And you've got to stand your ground. Child misbehaves. They breaks the rule in order to achieve bad boy or bad girl status in a group situation. Oh, they're superior. They want to be the bad boy or bad girl because they think it gives them status. A child will break the rule in order to gain attention from adults. Well, from a child's perspective, sometimes some attention, even if it's negative attention, is better than no attention. If they can't get positive attention from you, if they can't get praise, if they can't get mommy and daddy, to spend a little time with us or whatever, they'll do something bad. So then, then they'll get some, they'll still break, they'll get some attention from the adult. It may not be, the best, but a child misbehaves and it breaks the rule to dominate or exercise their power. Oh, yes, you get those, don't you? You have those times. Sometimes a child breaks a rule out of discouragement. They break the rule to vent their anger. Sometimes they break the rule because they're just not physically able to follow the rule or meet the expectation. As a teacher, my wife wrote, I need to determine why is this child breaking the rule and then take appropriate action. That is why when it comes to discipline, one size fits all does not work. Too bad school boards don't know that. As the responsible adult, I must not let the misbehavior get under my skin and annoy me to the point that I retaliate in kind, resort to naming and blaming, and fail to be the role model I should be, a model of mature, kind, gentle, and considerate behavior in the face of the challenge. There are those moments sometimes an exasperated parent, children misbehaving, children can push all the buttons, and if you can't step back a little bit and count to 10, you'll say things or do things you wish you never had done. You've got, you're the adult in the room. Yeah, I must behave as that. You must think as that adult. I must not think of my students as jerks, brats, or stupid kids, nor should I call them names and thus undermine my relationship with them. Rather, I must love them, wanting the best for them, while at the same time dealing with the misbehavior in effective ways that will result in positive change for them and the class as a whole. Yeah, there are so many school boards that have made this almost impossible for teachers because they've taken so many of the tools of discipline away from them. Parents don't discipline, so many parents these days don't discipline their kids. They send them to school and expect miracles. This can be a daunting task, so I pray daily for insight, discernment, and the wisdom to know how to respond. This task in a family situation is no less daunting, parents, and all the more important as we are raising Christian families, sons and daughters of God, who will need our love and courage to cope with an increasingly dark, dysfunctional, even hostile world hostile to the values of God. This world is getting increasingly hostile to the values of God here in North America. I hope we all will consider the issue of why children do what they do so we can respond to each one individually and teach and guide them effectively. That's our commission, We are to rear our children in the discipline and admonition of the Lord. Now, the Bible, it gets to where things, it talks about, family is at the heart of the Scriptures. Abram, the Mesopotamian, had a long time to prepare to be a father. The story of the Scriptures, of the covenant relationship of humanity with God begins, from this sense, really with Abram. In Genesis 12, Abram was called to have this relationship with God at age 75. God said, gave him all these promises to be father of many nations and all these things, but he had to wait something like 24 years would pass before God would finally be pleased to start to multiply Abram's family. Let's turn to where, this starts to turn around, Genesis 17 and verse 1. When Abram was 99 years old, I'll give it to this guy. He was still chugging along. The Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am Almighty God, walk before me and be blameless. Some versions, like the King James, I think it's be perfect. We're flesh. We can't be perfect. The idea is we are blameless. We're perfect. We can be perfect in our attitude of willingness to walk with God, but we're always going to make mistakes. We're all going to slip up. Verse 2, I will make my covenant between me and you and will multiply you exceedingly. Family is very important to God. Then Abram fell on his face and God talked with him. See, Abram he feared the Lord. He showed him great respect and awe. He did. Saying, as for me, God said, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be a father of many nations. It wasn't just of the Jews, of many nations. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be called Abraham. For I have made you the father of many nations, and I will make you exceedingly fruitful, And I will make nations of you, and kings shall come of you. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you in their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be God to you and your descendants after you. Now, Abram, who became Abraham, he is, he's the father of the faithful. This is what Paul was talking about. Let's go to Romans in the New Covenant Scriptures, Romans chapter 4 and verse 16. Now I'm going to cite this in Eugene Peterson's message. It's not a translation, it's a paraphrase, but it's kind of fun in this way, and I think we'll get the point. It's worthwhile to read. A little bit fresh, especially if you've been reading the New King James or the Coulter or King James Version, whatever it is. It gives you a little more modern context of this. Romans chapter 4, verse 16. This is why the fulfillment of God's promise depends entirely on trusting God and his way, and then simply embracing him and what he does. God's promise arrives as pure gift. That's the only way everyone can be sure to get in on it. Those who keep the religious traditions, the Jews, those who grew up in knowledge of the Scriptures, those who keep the religious traditions, and those who have never heard of them, the Gentiles, raised in Greco-Roman paganism. So how would they have a relationship with God? For Abraham is father of us all. Okay, hearkening back to Genesis and what God promised Abraham to begin, he'd be father of many nations. He is not our racial father. That's reading the story backwards. He is our faith father. We call Abraham father not because he got God's attention by living like a saint, but because God made something out of Abraham when he was a nobody. Isn't that what we've always read in Scriptures? God saying to Abraham, I set you up as a father of many peoples. Abraham was first named father and then became a father because he dared to trust God to do what only God could do. Abraham's son Isaac was born when, he was as good as dead. Guy who's almost 100 years old, he's not going to get it on like a young guy anymore. And his wife was in her 90s. She'd gone through menopause probably decades before. Abraham was first named father and then became a father because he dared to trust God to do what only God could do. Raise the dead to life. Okay, this is reference to this whole thing. Even after his son Isaac was born, God put him to the test and said go and sacrifice him, on Mount Moriah. He wanted to see if, Abraham really trusted him, and Abraham did. He trusted that God could even raise him from the dead. Raise the dead to life. With a word, make something out of nothing. See, this is how the whole universe, we were created, out of the word of God. God spoke and it was done. When everything was hopeless, Abraham believed anyway, deciding to live not on the basis of what he saw he couldn't do, but on what God said he would do. And so Abraham was made father of a multitude of peoples. God himself said to him, "You're going to have a big family, Abraham." And he did. God used this thing, we remember he took him out and showed him the sky, the stars of the sky. You're when you didn't have all this light pollution and you could see the Milky Way and all this incredible, and you can still go out sometimes in the desert or up on a mountaintop and see this. Abraham learned and practiced sound leadership skills. He learned to care for his people. It was more than just a nuclear family. He had several hundred people under his care. Servants, and his, all the people connected with him. He was a clan leader. Of course, Abraham cared for his wife Sarah. Abraham was willing to fight to save his brother's son Lot and Lot's family from slavery because they were captured by these kings and are going to be hauled off as slaves. Abraham went out. He got his men, his clan, and then he had some friends who said, "Hey, these people come help me, and we're going to counterattack." And they did. You can read that in the scriptures and there in Genesis. Abraham was willing to plead and actually bargain with God to spare Lot's life. And even, the people of Sodom, if they could find, a few righteous people in that corrupt city. The sad thing was, of course, God couldn't find a few righteous people. He just ended up taking Lot, his wife, and two of his daughters out of the city. Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed. Too bad our leaders aren't willing to remember the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Been some great archaeological digs down at Sodom in that area. They have very fascinating finds. The story is, has real historicity there. Let's go to Genesis 18, Genesis 18, verse 16. Interesting comment, at that point in time, when God decided to drop in on Abraham and his wife Sarah on his way, to wipe out Sodom and Gomorrah, to see what was going on, and if they were as bad as all the reports he had, he was going to take action. But anyways, that is when the Lord and his angel escort got up to leave, because Abraham saw them coming. There were three guys, and he made them a meal. They set off for Sodom, and Abraham walked with them along the way to say goodbye. Then God said, "Shall I keep back, from Abraham what I'm going to do?" A little self-talk that God is thinking about this. See, you're getting the inside track of what God was thinking. He said, Abraham is going to become a large and strong nation. All the nations of the world are going to find themselves blessed through him. And that has truly happened. Through his descendants, this whole world has been blessed. Then he says, "Yes, I've settled on him as the one to train his children and future family to observe God's way of life, live kindly and generously and fairly, so that God can complete in Abraham what he promised him." See, he knew Abraham was the type of guy who would train his and bring up his children in the nurture, discipline, admonition, and counsel of the Lord. And that's our job. Abraham's the father of the faithful. We follow his good example. The Lord God was confident that Abraham would do his parenting job as a father. You can consider the outcome of Abraham's two sons in the scripture, Ishmael and Isaac. Even Ishmael, Abraham taught him how to hunt, taught him how to lead. Ishmael became a successful tribal leader. He taught Ishmael how to care for his family, and Abraham showed him an example of love. When Abraham died, Ishmael went with Isaac, to the burial. He honored his father. And Abraham taught Isaac also to assume the leadership of his clan. That wasn't for Ishmael, because he wasn't born of Sarah. He's born of Hagar. Because Isaac was born of promise through Sarah. So Abraham taught Isaac the skills of a shepherd or a rancher. He learned and became skills in commerce, managing wealth, even in agriculture. He taught, of course, Isaac the love of God and to respect and maintain the covenant relationship, which Isaac did. He was faithful. And he also modeled for Isaac how you treat a woman, how he should treat his mother, Sarah, and through that, his wife, Rebekah. That would be Isaac's wife, Rebekah. Let's go to Colossians and the New Covenant Scriptures, Colossians chapter 3 and verse 20, Amplified Bible. Colossians 3 and verse 20. Children, obey your parents in everything, for this is pleasing to the Lord. Obey your children in the Lord. You don't have to question them all the time. You don't have to say, why in this and why in that. If they say something and it's, it's not contrary to the law of God, just go and do it. Children, obey your parents in everything, for this is pleasing to the Lord. Fathers, do not provoke or irritate or fret your children. Don't be hard on them or harass them, lest they become discouraged and sullen and morose and feel inferior and frustrated. Don't break their spirit. We used to talk about breaking horses. I think they found that even a better way, they've come up with a better way to train horses, that you don't break their spirit. It's a little bit different. You gentle them. It takes more time, of course. Of course, with children, you have plenty of time. Proverbs 4. Let's go to Proverbs 4 and verse 1. Proverbs 4 and verse 1. Children, listen when your father corrects you. Pay attention and learn good judgment, for I am giving you good guidance. Don't turn away from my instructions, for I too was once my father's son, tenderly loved as my mother's only child. Yeah, children have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to listen to our parents. And it is, of course, if we honor our father and mother. That is the first commandment with promise, good things. To learn wisdom, it's an exhortation to learn wisdom in life. Our society doesn't talk about wisdom, but wisdom is that quality or state of being wise. Okay, that makes sense. Knowledge of what is true and right, coupled with just judgment as to action. We learn properly with wisdom what is true and right, and we have the ability, when we pursue this, so that we can make a correct judgment as to what action is right. Wisdom, another word for it is sagacity, discernment, insight, so that we can act on something. Wise and godly men in every age of the world and rank in society agree that true wisdom involves always obedience, which is required in order to be, united to happiness. Book of Proverbs make the point that we, are to get this wisdom, even if it takes, even if it sometimes we have to take pains to get it. Wisdom involves, of course, getting the mastery over our own carnal nature's lust and the tendency to always want to do whatever is easier rather than doing something that might be harder but is going to build our character and lead to some sort of, development of a virtue or an achievement in our life. Our society right now is focused on material wealth, and material wealth is transitory. As the country song always puts it, there are no luggage racks on a hearse. Watch the hearses go by all the time. There's no luggage racks on those things. Now, those who are the teachers of truth in the church of God can also be our spiritual fathers, according to the scriptures. And those teachers of truth who give us instruction may also, on occasion, give us reproof and correction for our own benefit. We should welcome that. People take interest in us. That's not the way it always works, though. Yeah, people, so much of our society, they resented when their parents would teach them, and they come in the church of God, and they resent when, those who are their spiritual elders teach them. I've seen that. Let's go to 1 Corinthians 4 and verse 14. 1 Corinthians 4 and verse 14, Amplified Bible Version. Apostle Paul, writing to the Corinthian church, which he raised up, he's writing to the brethren. He's saying he had written them some pretty tough stuff already, where they were missing the mark. He said, I do not write these things to shame you. I'm not trying to put you down or discourage you or hurt you in any ways. I don't write these things to shame you, but to warn and advise you as my beloved children. For even if you were to have 10,000 teachers to guide you in Christ, yet you would not have many fathers. Someone who would lead them to Christ and assume the responsibility for them. That's what a father does. We have a responsibility to lead. We have a responsibility to, for them, for their lives, for their well-being. That's why this whole thing of, schools trying to cut parents out of the decision-making process of what goes on in their child's life is so wrong. That's why the parents' rights movement is so good. That schools can't just usurp parents' rights. Yet you would not have many fathers, those who led you to Christ and assumed responsibility for you. For I, Apostle Paul said, became your father in Christ Jesus through the good news of the kingdom of God and its promised salvations. Verse 16, so I urge you, be imitators of me. Be imitators of me, just as a child imitates his father. Hey, haven't you seen that before? With little kids, if dad goes out and he's going to go do something and his son, just a toddler or whatever, walks out after just like him, imitating him. I've seen that. Seen that with my own children in times past. They're all big now. So I urge you to be imitators of me. For this reason I have sent Timothy to you, who is my beloved and faithful child in the Lord, and he will remind you of my way of life in Christ. How Paul conducted himself, how he lived. Just as I teach everywhere in every church. Paul was consistent. He wasn't hypocritical. Now, some of you have become arrogant and pretentious, as though I were not coming to see you. No. Paul makes his rounds. I'll get around to you, Corinthians, but I will come to you soon if the Lord is willing. I'm thinking he wrote this in Ephesus, and he was at that point in time locked up. He was in jail. The local authorities weren't happy with him. And I will find out not just the talk of these arrogant people, but evaluate their spiritual power, whether they live up to their own claims. Because there are those who are saying, oh, we're so much better. You should listen to us and what we're teaching more so than Paul. Verse 20, for the kingdom of God is not based on talk, but on power. That's ultimately what it is. Which would you prefer? Shall I come to you, you Corinthians, with a rod of discipline and correction, or with love and a gentle spirit? So it's like Dad was, coming to them, and saying, what do you want? He was sort of giving them the, how are you going to listen to what I'm saying? Are you going to listen to what I'm instructing you in doing? Or do I have to come, with a rod of correction? Let's go to Hebrews chapter 13. Hebrews chapter 13, and I want to read verse 17. I think it was Paul who wrote this very clearly, and I'm not alone in this. Many do. Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 17, Coulter translation. Follow your leaders and be submissive, because they are looking out for your spiritual well-being, as those who must be ready to give an account to God, in order that they may do this with joy and not with groaning, because that would be unprofitable for you. Yes, it's tough to be a leader in God's church. It is tough. It is hard. One of the things leaders in God's church must do is to communicate a love of the truth. And those of you who are fathers in the church, if you're Christians, you must communicate to your children a love for the truth. You must be able to do this effectively for their own good. Why? Because of the times we live in. If if your children do not love the truth, they are going to be in for difficult situations in their life. Let's go to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 7. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 7, Amplified Bible Version. For the mystery of lawlessness, and I like the way Amplified says, rebellion against divine authority and the coming reign of lawlessness. Oh, sounds like the 21st century. Sounds like Canada in right now. Sounds like the United States. Yeah, that does. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Now, you will probably also remember how I used to talk about a restraining power that would operate until the time should come for the emergence of this lawless man, the Antichrist, who would be the culmination of this whole movement of lawlessness, that it will come to a peak and build up. Seems like we're on that way. Verse 9, this man will come to do the work of Satan with counterfeit power and signs and miracles. He will use every kind of evil deception to fool those on their way to destruction, because they refuse to love and accept the truth that would save them. So God will cause them to be greatly deceived, and they will believe these lies. Then they will be condemned for enjoying evil rather than believing the truth. If you love your children, you must, communicate to them. You must inculcate in them a love for the truth. Because those who refuse to love the truth, they won't be saved. They won't have a future if they refuse to love the truth. Any person without an interest in seeking the truth, God's grace, is dead spiritually speaking. And what's going to happen? They'll be, poor, contemptible, miserable. They can amass all sorts of, wealth. They can get all sorts of likes. They can be popular among the peer group that they might have. What's that going to mean at the end when they die? If they don't have a love for the truth and they don't have a relationship with God, they're without Christ. They're without hope. They're aliens, alienated from the covenants of promise. That's your number one goal as a parent, is communicate this love of the truth. To do that, you've got to have a good relationship with the child. They can't be hating you. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 12. Now I'll go back to Eugene Peterson's message here. Very contemporary rendering of this passage in Scriptures. Hebrews 12 and verse 5. Or have you forgotten how good parents treat children? That God regards you as his children. My dear child, don't shrug off God's discipline, but don't be crushed by it either. It's the child he loves that he disciplines. The child he embraces, he also corrects. God is educating you. That's why you must never drop out. He's treating you as dear children. This trouble you're in isn't punishment, it's training. The normal experience of children. Only irresponsible adults would leave children to fend for themselves. Would you prefer an irresponsible God? We respect our own parents for training and not spoiling us. So why not embrace God's training so we can truly live? While we were children, our parents did what seemed best to them. But God is doing what is best for us, training us to live God's holy best. At the time, discipline isn't much fun. It always feels like it's going against the grain. Later, of course, it pays off handsomely, for it's the well-trained who find themselves mature in their relationship with God. So don't sit around on your hands, moaning and groaning. No more dragging your feet. Clear the path for long-distance runners so that no one will trip and fall. So no one will step in a hole and sprain an ankle. Help each other out and run for it. It's the way we approach life. Remember what the scriptures say. Deuteronomy 5:16. Honor your father and mother, as the Lord your God commanded you. Then you will live a long and full life in the land and in the salvation in the kingdom of God that God is promising you.